Mary Mac Bakehouse can now be found at Steel City Craft Emporium at 3121 Penn Avenue in Pittsburgh, PA.
Hello and welcome to In the Kitchen with Mary Mac. Today we're going to do a simple pot roast. This is just like a classic dish that you can make in a crock pot and kind of do a little bit of early prep on it. Pretty easy to throw together, and it's just really, really tasty and has lots of vegetables with it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful dish. When I made mine, I was looking up recipes for pot roast, okay, just to see what was out there. A lot of recipes will say, use a cheap cut of meat because you're going to be cooking it a long time, blah, 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 And I suppose that's true, but sometimes you can't cook something long enough to make it good. Let me just put it that way. So use a nice looking cut of meat. You don't have to use an expensive roast, but use a nice looking cut of meat. I happen to have a small rump roast in the freezer, so that's what I used. You can use a chuck roast or a sirloin tip works nice too. Trim a lot of excess fat off if there's any on your roast. What I do is I basically make a rub and put on the roast and let it sit for a little bit while I'm prepping everything else. So plan on a half pound of roast per person. I had a 1 pound roast, which I ordered some roasts with some recent beef that I bought. And I thought 1 pound would be nice because it's usually just my husband and myself. And then I took it out of the freezer and I just laughed because it was so little. I was like, oh my gosh, we had 6 kids. So when you're down to making a 1 pound beef roast, it's just ridiculous. But that's what I did. So get your roast and a nice little glass dish that your roast will fit comfortably in. And this is what you're going to do. You're going to mix up in a little bowl a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, an 1/8 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of either granulated or powdered garlic, and a 1/2 teaspoon of either granulated or powdered onion. Mix those up. Sprinkle them on your roast and then rub them in and let them sit in the dish while you are working on the rest of your vegetables. And you're just going to leave that out at room temperature. You can cover it with plastic wrap and it'll be fine because you're going to be putting it into your crock pot shortly anyway. So once you have the rub on that, just set it aside. And here's what you're going to put in with your roast. You can put in what you like. If you don't like something, for goodness sake, don't put it in there, okay? This is what I had. Cabbage, a small head of cabbage, onions, 10 to 12 small red skin potatoes. These ones were like golf ball size. That's a nice size to put in with the roast because you're not cutting them. They're just a nice little round potato. You can also use, and that's about 2 pounds of small potatoes, or you can use those little tiny fingerling potatoes, about 2 pounds of those. Those work really nice. 2 turnips I had in there. They usually come, I don't know why, turnips come 2 to a package. Like, what is that, standard turnip packaging or what? I don't know. 6 to 8 nice-sized carrots. Do not use shortcut carrots. Yuck. Use real carrots. You can also use parsnips or rutabagas. What's the other thing I was thinking? Any root vegetable, really, you can use in here. Kohlrabi, if it's available, that's another one you can put in. So there's all your root vegetables. And I also, I made gravy to go with this. And I cheated and bought a package of brown gravy mix because I'm just tired of fighting. So I gave up today. It was actually really good. There you go. And if you have about a 6-quart crock pot, that's really nice. Like a great big crock pot works nice for this. But even if you have a smaller crock pot, you can put less vegetables in it. Now, another thing you can do, which is a good cheat, is you can use 2 small crock pots and put all just vegetables in one, and then some vegetables with your meat in the other. Works really well. So that's a thought for you if that's what you have going on at your house. So once you have your meat setting aside there, You're going to clean your cabbage, cut it in half, take the core out, and we're only going to use 1/2 of our head of cabbage. Unless it's exceptionally small, then use the whole thing. Have your cabbage prepped, cleaned, cut it in half, and then cut that half into 4 quarters. Set it aside. Clean your 2 onions, quarter them, set them aside. Scrub your potato skins until they're nice and clean. Cut off any bad spots, set those aside. Peel your turnips. I don't know why. You just can't scrub a turnip and cook it. I don't know. The skins always look like they've been through a war. So peel your turnips, quarter them, set them aside. Peel your carrots. What I did with mine, if there were smaller parts of them, I just cut them off and used it whole. If they were bigger, I cut them in half. If they were real big, I quartered them. So use your own judgment. But prep all your carrots, and you'll want your carrot pieces to be about 3 to 4 inches long. And then you're going to need a little bit of salt and pepper for your vegetables and 1 bay leaf. You need 1 bay leaf to put on a roast. That is the rule of roasts. 1 bay leaf. No more, no less. Now, in your crock pot, the first thing you're going to do is put about 1/2 cup of water in the bottom, because this is going to be cooking for a while, so you don't want it to dry out. Usually you don't need to add water to a crock pot, but always with a roast, I'm just worried that it'll dry out. And here is how you layer it. On the bottom, put your cabbage and make a little well like in the middle of your cabbage. That's where your roast is going to sit. So put your cabbage in there, and then you can put your onions around the edges. Set your roast right down in the middle and put your potatoes all around it. Set your bay leaf on top of your little roast there, and then add your turnips around that, and then I spread the carrots out over the top. Take a little salt and pepper and sprinkle over the top of your vegetables as you layer them. Just a little sprinkle here and there. When you finish off with your carrots, sprinkle that on the top and put your lid on your crock pot. If you're going to be gone for the entire day, you're going to put this on low and let it go for 8 to 10 hours. If you're doing this like in the morning and you want to eat at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you plan on it cooking for 4 or 5 hours, put your crock pot on high. I have a crazy crock pot that cooks. I mean, it's unreal how fast this thing will cook. So I had it for 4 hours on high, and everything was cooked very nicely. The meat was not like super duper tender, but it was tender, tender cooked. The meat could have cooked longer, but the vegetables were like almost perfect. So even if it had cooked 6 hours, it would have really been good. But this is something that you can cook for, if you put it in, if you prep everything ahead of time, assemble it in the morning before you leave for work, and then you're gone for 10 hours. It's going to be delicious when you get home and ready to eat. But remember, if you're going to leave it for a long time, cook it on low, like 10 hours. If you're going to be like 5 or 6 hours, cook it on high. Now, what I did, I had my little packet of gravy mix, and you're supposed to mix that with 1 cup of water. But what I did was I took the juice out of my crock pot with my squeezer tool that I don't remember the name of.
Do you mean the baster?
Yes, I could not think of that word.
I like squeezer tool. It's very professional.
When I come out with my own line of cooking stuff, I'm telling you.
There's going to be thingy-majigs. There's going to be what's-its.
Doohickeys.
The squeezer.
The squeezer thing.
The other squeezer thing that's tongs.
It'll be emblazoned on the top. Mary Mac's squeezer thing. Mary Mac's thingamajig. Mary Mac's what's it. You could buy the whole set.
That's what we'll do when we get to our merchandising.
Merchandising. You can put all those tools into the Mary Mac tall pot, which is also known as a crock. Okay, so take your juice out of the crock pot, your nice roast and vegetable juice. Mix that with your 1 envelope of brown gravy mix. Mix that up, and it makes a delicious gravy for serving with your roast. Now, in the olden days, when people didn't have massively large crock pots and those sorts of things, they used to make, my mother and my mother-in-law and my grandmothers used to make this in a big oven roaster. You may have seen a big oven roaster. You've probably seen a picture of one. People usually don't have these. It's a roasting pan that would hold a turkey it comes with a lid, and people used to roast things in them all the time. I mean, anything, chickens. I can remember making 2 whole chickens in my enamel roaster that I have because I was taking dinner to somebody. So I thought, well, I'll make a chicken for supper and I'll take them a chicken for supper. So I had 2 chickens and I had a bunch of vegetables in that roaster with them. And it was so convenient because, you're cooking 2 meals at the same time. It worked really well. But those big old roasters, when we would make pot roast in those for the large family that we had, you could put like a 4 or 5 pound roast in there and 5 pounds of potatoes and and 2 pounds of carrots and everything else and load that baby up. And it made a ton in that thing, and you cooked it in the oven. But when you're cooking something in the oven, it does heat your house up, number one, but you don't want to do that when you're not going to be home. You don't want to have something in your oven for 6 hours and you're not there, just in case. So, and they also dry out. Now you can do a pot roast in the oven. They work really nice, but you have to check them and keep adding water because the meat will dry out. So the crock pot is just a delightful tool for doing this. And this is a nice cold weather meal. It's a nice big family meal, and it's a nice meal when I like it because when I want to have a bunch of root vegetables, I really love root vegetables. When I want to have a bunch of root vegetables, I like the idea of having just a little small beef roast in there and like 5 pounds of vegetables. That's what I like. So I actually just had this for supper tonight and it was very good, which is why I'm enjoying it, telling you about it so much. So not difficult, not a ton of prep, not a bunch of getting pans dirty because you're roasting this and that in some other pan and mixing things up. This is pretty straightforward and simple and very good.
Make sure to check us out online on Facebook and Instagram at Mary Mac Bakehouse, on Twitter at Mobile Mary Mac and Mary Mac Podcast, on our website, marymacpodcast.com, and you can find us in person at Standing Chimney the first Saturday of every month and at the Steel City Craft Emporium in Pittsburgh, PA.
Thanks a lot for listening if you did, and if you didn't, too bad for you.